So is he an asshole or a narcissist? We're about to find out. And if you're trying to build your channel, leave me a comment so that way I can subscribe. Ready? Hello, and thank you for purchasing my deck. This video is going to be explaining the archetype cards a little bit more in depth. So each one is actually based off of, originally it was made upon what alcoholic children would actually turn out as, so they're different roles in the family. And then it evolved up into narcissistic children, but I'm using it in the deck. Obviously it's the narcissistic oracle cards, but I'm also going to give you a little bit of a background as far as what each personality type represented by each planet represents, and also how it's caused. So that way you can give the person you're reading for a little bit more detail as far as what they might be dealing with. You as the reader can, pick up on who the card is referring to, but this is just going to give you a little bit of background and details as far as each one. Ready? So here we go. The Sun. The golden child, arrogant, prideful, cocky, can't see you, idealizes, self-centered, conceited, projection, avoids rejection. So for the Sun, the golden child, it is the spoiled one of the family. Spoiled in the sense that usually there's the narcissistic parent, and so they set that child aside to be favored, glorified. Everything that they do is just better than the other kids or whatnot. It's a way to gauge, but also and when you get to the core of that, that child or person, they're raised to serve, so to serve the narcissistic parent. So because of that, when they become an adult, they're used to being glorified for everything, and when they're not, they get upset about it because they're used to everything that they do, is better than somebody else or whatnot. So when that comes into like dating, as far as, if you're dealing with someone getting a reading and their person comes up as that, their person's not going to understand rejection. So what the card means as far as rejection, it's a projection instead of rejection. Rather than seeing that they've been rejected, they'll actually project a different scenario. Like they almost don't take no for an answer because they can't understand. What do you mean I'm not perfect? What do you mean I'm not the sun in the sky? You know what I mean? So they will project like, oh, well, it must be because of this or that, or they almost can't see past themselves, in the sense where they actually think that they're the sun in the sky. And this can lead to the person that they're interacting with often their feelings get neglected. They don't get seen, you know what I mean? Because that person is so focused on themselves, like, what do I need to do to be the sun? And I am the sun, and like how the sun is. When the sun shines, you can't see the other stars. So this person, if they get this card, they cannot see the person standing in front of them, and often will portray narcissistic traits, especially when it comes down to anything that might challenge them not being the center of attention, or the golden child, or praised, or perfect. So that's what that card would mean. Next we have Mercury, the Jester, the clown. Witty, charming, funny, sarcastic, flamboyant, gossip, secrets, lies, mask, exaggerates, trickster, romantic, seductive. So this card, the Mercury card, the Jester, this is somebody who in their childhood growing up, they made a joke out of everything. And they're usually the class clown. Like they made everybody laugh because everything they had to. The way they trained their mind to handle their upbringing was to make everything not serious or like a joke. Like, well, Dad threw Mom into the table again, but at least this time the tablecloth. They're not really funny jokes, but they just make everything a joke. Nothing serious. So this can often come up in a narcissistic form as far as them communicating wise. Obviously it's the Mercury card for a reason. So they have a habit of speaking toxically when they're toxic. So, and then this type of narcissism can be caused a lot by people lying to them, especially their parents, or yeah, I mean that's a main one right there. It's a verbal narcissism, if that makes any sense, but it's ruled by Mercury, so it's going to be like lying, gossip, things like that. Usually has happened to them, and then they, people repeat what they learn. I'm trying to think. So yeah, and they tell stories. I mean, that's how they control the world around them, is to tell stories, make people laugh, but it's still in a narcissistic kind of way. So this person, if somebody gets this card as their person or whatnot, could be guilty of like lying or being very, very sweet one moment and then not the next. I mean, we all know Mercury, right? So just think of it in that sense. Lies, empty promises, charming and then not, the dual behavior, the two-sided. But yeah, that's basically going to be the Jester for you. Venus, the Diva, the drama queen. Insecure, jealous, vain, envy, self-absorbed, proud, cold, vindictive, seductive, shallow, hides low self-esteem. So Venus, goddess of love, beauty. This card is going to be somebody who, and I'm going to be quite frank with you, a lot of times there's sexual abuse involved with this archetype of narcissism. And the reason you would know that is because that's what makes them so looks focused. They think, because there's just something about that kind of abuse that makes people feel like their looks are their everything. I'm not too sure why it is. I know I've picked up on that throughout my studies and whatnot, but they're often like the girls that steal other guys' boyfriends, or yeah, I mean, and they put such an importance on looks. So I mean, it can come across with guys also, and they're at the core root of it, it's a sexual abuse thing. I don't know why, but I know Venus just rules this aspect of narcissism and narcissistic abuse. And there's something about when that happens to somebody as a child, they grow up they see the outer shell, like they don't have an inside. Do you know what I mean? They, I guess because, sexual nature as it is, and usually it's a male predator. I know this is kind of deep, so, but they're focused on your looks. Do you know what I mean? So then when you grow up believing that, especially like if you're like a child and that happens to you, there's no love involved with that. It makes, it's like a shallow emptiness inside. And then because a self-worth is based on that, it causes them to be jealous and vindictive and vain and like competitive. Like, yeah, I just think of like beauty pageant gone wrong or something, But that's what's at the core of that kind of narcissism. So the best way to handle that, though, is reassurance, constant reassurance of not their looks, but who they are. It's a difficult card, but the core root of how to advise somebody who gets that card is that you want to reassure them of who they are, not what they look like. They're not an object. Basically, is how you would get through. So, and then the problems that are going to arise from that are going to be because they're seeing themselves as an object and comparing themselves to other people as objects. You know what I mean? So you want to go with depth. Like, it's the bulk, the Venus card, yeah. So beauty is not skin deep, it's within, and you want to show that person that. But the problem here, when it's a narcissistic trait, is that they do not know that. They don't see the inside, they only see the outside. So hope that helps. Next we have the Earth, the enabler, the caretaker, empathy, compassion, savior, codependent, doormat, cheerleader. So the Earth, the codependent, we all know the codependent or the empath. They are the healers, the lovers, the ones making excuses for everybody, or seeing the good in everyone, and it is a beautiful thing. It is. It's not narcissistic, but it's most likely it'll be the person you're reading for, or it can also be the one of the parents of the person that you're reading for. And when you have a parent that's over enabling or over caretaking, it can actually spoil their child to turn out like the other parent, who's often narcissistic. I mean, narcissists and enablers or empaths, they tend to go together. A lot of times get married, one helps the other. But when a parent is overly like that to a child, it teaches them the opposite sometimes, because they see strength in their narcissistic parent. So as the reader, you'll know where that card falls, but that's basically about giving. It can be about over-giving. It can also be about denying the problem. It's basically just the peace-giving. I mean, it's the Earth, right? The hippie with the bandana and the the bell, you know what I mean? Barefoot in the grass. Just all about the love. But that can be bad when you don't set boundaries, because you need to set boundaries. And if a child learns from one parent that some people don't and the others do, you get where I'm going here. So that's what you would want to see the caretaker as, the caretaker. So based upon where that falls in your spread and how you see it as a reader, that's what that card's going to mean. Next we have the Moon, the lost child, the daydreamer, introvert, antisocial, depressed, unmotivated, shy, numb, hermit, fearful, anxious, oblivious, distracted, aloof. So the Moon, or the lost child, that's usually like in a narcissistic family, there's going to be the golden child, which is the one that's praised for everything, and then they'll have a scapegoat, which is the one that's blamed for everything. So everything that goes wrong will be put on the scapegoat. Everything that is right goes onto the golden child. And the reason for that is like a narcissistic parent's going to see their good qualities in one child and their bad qualities in another. But then there's the other one that's left over, and that's just the one that's there. That's the one, they call it the lost child. They call it the village person, or basically they're there to cheer on, be proud of the golden child, but also to point the finger and, look at the scapegoat. But at no point in their upbringing do they get really acknowledged for anything. They're kind of just there to be there. They don't get lectured and they don't get praised. They're just there. And so because they don't get acknowledged, when they come to be adults, they don't participate in their relationships, in things, they're used to. It's almost like watching TV all the time, and then when you're in the real world, you're just watching the real world, but it's like you're not watching TV anymore, So so they can be like numb and kind of not there. And so this can be mistaken for narcissism, especially with somebody who's like, do you love me? Do you care? Are you there? Hello? And they're just like not answering those texts. They're not there. You know what I mean? But it's because of their upbringing. But I wouldn't call them a narcissist, because they wouldn't invest the energy to do anything to hurt anybody or to love anybody or to save anybody. As far as the advice I would give on that one, I would have to think. Take interest in their hobbies. That's what you would do. They're going to have something that they put their attention to while being ignored. So they're not interacting with people. They're doing something. Video games, reading books. There's all kinds of things that they get into. If you take interest in their hobbies, it'll get them to talk. There's an episode of Family Guy where she's talking to the boy about herself. I think Peter's in the bank or something, but how she finally gets him to respond to her, because he just sits there quiet as she starts talking, about things that he's interested in, or things that, And that's the smallest thing, and then he starts talking. So that's what the answer to that card would be if you pull it, is, you know, take more interest into their likes, what it is that they're interested in. Because the more you yell, demand, talk about all the things that, you know, they're not doing, they are doing, and all of these things, they are just quiet because they're used to being quiet. So take an interest in their hobbies would be the answer to that card. Jupiter, the hero. Overachiever, perfectionist, motivated, overgenerous, sensitive to criticism, fragile ego, resentful, never satisfied, insecure. So Jupiter, the hero, you know, Jupiter, he's the god of the gods, right? So this type of narcissism is going to come from the breadwinner, you know, the one who made the family proud, but he also did this in a sense to hide the family's secrets. So when you come across this card, they're dealing with somebody who will often sweep problems under the rug. They're determined and focused on winning or having a title, or, you know, to the point where it's like it could be dangerous, you know what I mean? Like if they don't get number one or they're not the best, they don't know what to do, because in a sense that almost makes them have to deal with their problems, which as a child that's how they escaped them. So this can also be, well, it can become an abusive force of or source of narcissism, where if somebody's not the best or they're not the hero, they don't know who they are. And when they don't know who they are, they're insecure, and then that can affect the spouse or other people around them in a very negative way, because when somebody loses that mask, if you will, and they call, you know, narcissism a mask, but that specific kind of mask, if they're not the best or they're not the winner or they're not the hero, they don't know who they are. And then when they do that, it's like fight or flight, you know. Sometimes it can even result in like resentment and cutting people down. But yeah, I mean, for this card, I would say you would want to reassure them that it's okay, you know what I mean, not to be the best, or that they're the best no matter what. Or even more so, honestly, what I would do is you would want to do something like still just see them as the hero in your eyes, you know what I mean? Just as long as you're looking at them as always a hero, they're always gonna feel like they know who they are. And more so, it is going to be about that spouse or that person next to them that they want to be the hero in front of. So as long as you maintain that in their mind, in your relationship, it should stay on a positive level. But it's when it doesn't, it goes into a negative level. And then if you point it out, or if you dig into it, you're going to deal with a full-blown narcissist, because that's their spot. Ruled by Jupiter, that's the hero. Alright, next we have Saturn, the saint, the victim. Holier than thou, childlike, always the victim, needy, attracted to drama, seeks sympathy, and points the finger. Okay, so this is the child growing up who wasn't anything like the family, you know. They a lot of times listen to the outside, the family, so, you know, their friends or just the people around them, which is just a dangerous way to be, because you don't ever want to base who you are, what you do, or anything about you off of other people. But this person's going to be all about it. So they're always going to be playing the victim. And the reason they learn to play the victim is because it's how they explain their family growing up. And because of this, people did acknowledge what was going on and went, oh, poor you, you know, and they give sympathy, attention, you know, reassurance. So that becomes a habit as an adult. So what they inevitably end up doing is going too far with it. So now this type of person, if you pull this card, they're going to be always the victim, even when there's nothing actually wrong, you know, putting other people down to make them right, but not just putting them down like they're better than them, putting them down like they did something wrong. And this is how they learn to gain sustenance, attention, anything. They learn that by being somebody's victim. So because of that, these are also the people that will be talking behind their spouse's back saying, oh, you don't know what I go through, you know, this, that, and that. So, you know, there's going to be a campaign smearing, which is a narcissistic trait. And the way to deal with this card in a person as a relationship, you'd want to advise the person getting the reading, you don't want to, because that's going to hurt that the person's self-worth to always be feeling like they're victimizing someone when they're not. But that's the only way that this person's going to feel love. But if it's referring to a parent of someone, that explains why the hero became the hero, for instance, or it can explain a lot. I mean, you as the reader, you could do the put the pieces together, but that's what the victim card is. You know, it's somebody who that's what they learned to fit into society because they came from a problematic family, I think is the main point you'd want to express to the person who gets that card. Next we have Pluto, the manipulator, the liar. Psychopathy, lies, cheats, steals, feels no remorse, can't be trusted, seeks immediate gratification, impulse, no empathy, proud, confident, secure. This card, advise them, no matter what, to exit. You do not want this card. This is the worst card of my deck. If you pull this card, this person was groomed to be basically a sociopath in a sense where they did not learn to use their empathy. But not only that, a lot of times when somebody, if you pull this card, that person had one empathic earth parent and a narcissistic parent. Anyone on the spectrum, but what made them the way they are, and even worse than their parent, was not only did they have a narcissistic parent teaching them narcissistic traits, but they had an enabling parent teaching them and supporting them when they did anything. You know, that's where the Earth card can actually come in negatively. It can make the sociopath coming. Because when you're stealing or when you're lying or, you know, just being outright awful, you're supposed to get that firm smackdown and discipline and boundaries. But with an enabling parent, they'll go, oh, okay, well, you know, it's just like your father and I'm making excuses. That's not good. It raises monsters, you know. So this person, if you get this card, it's a warning. Like, it's not a good sign. Like, you want to exit because most cases, if you were to go clinically, they don't get better. Like, normally, it's very, very rare. I mean, and but you know, you'd also want to address the fact, if this is in regards to a lover, why is this person attracted to that lover who's portraying these qualities? It actually says something about the person getting the read also. You might want to challenge how their parents might have been, because if they had a parent that was like that, it would be why you're pulling this card for their lover. And the sooner they can address and see that, the sooner they can address their problem. Because typically when these kind of actions come out for a lover, most people know, you know, you want to walk away. But somebody who would stay or even be attracted to that, it's actually something for the person getting the reading, the person who's dating the Pluto, to look at. It's always, you want to look at their upbringing, their language of love, what they learned from their parents. Why did they learn that, you know? It's one thing to be a caretaker, but even a caretaker, you know, should reach a point. Should reach a point. It's hard. I mean, a lot of times enablers that end up who marry these type, their parents were that way. And that's just, it's a given. Like, why else? I mean, we were all made in pairs. There is someone for everyone. But if somebody's coming to you for a read and you pull this card, obviously they're coming to you for a read for help. And that's what readers do. You want to advise them to look into their parents, would be my advice for that card. Okay? Mars, the bully. ego-driven, arrogant, cocky, rage, sensitive to criticism, self-centered, masculine, cruel, insecure, aggressive, and competitive. So, when you're dealing with somebody who has the Mars narcissistic qualities, I think we all know Mr. has to compete with everything. No, I'm better, I do it better. Everything you say, they pretty much have to beat you at. So when this comes up in a reading, that's definitely somebody who feels like they're in constant competition to prove themselves or to have a self-worth or to have, to exist. They have to fight to exist within the relationship. And so the reason why this comes about is as a child, they were put down. Usually, it can be from a mother figure. It usually comes from a father figure, but it's because their parent was insecure, so constantly in competition. Anything that they did, their parental role had to compete, put them down, or it's like, Dad, I got an A, and it's like, oh, well, I got A's all the time. Like anything they've ever said as a kid, was put down or put into a competition. So they learned to do the same, and in their own relationship, they're probably doing it with the person that you're reading for. So that's kind of what that card means. It's basic, Mars, God of War, they're in competition. And the reason why, though, is because their parent was in competition with them. They saw them, they were insecure that their child was going to pass them up. So that's kind of what that card would mean. So I hope that describes Mars well enough. Uranus, the scapegoat, the rebel. Troublemaker, envious, pessimistic, low self-worth, rejects affection, bitter, emotionally unavailable, craves rejection, jealous, can't accept love or praise. So the scapegoat. The scapegoat, I have a soft spot for. I was personally the golden child growing up, but the scapegoat is actually the one that in their family growing up, their narcissistic parental figure looked at them and saw only their own bad qualities in that child. For some reason, I don't know why it happens, but it does. They have to have one that represents the part of the parent that they hate about themselves. So when they looked at that child, they saw the things that they hated about themselves. As if they didn't have the same exact qualities. That's exactly what made the parent hate that about their child more. And so the scapegoat grows up just believing they're awful because their parent looked at them and saw their worst qualities. And that's what this person, who's a narcissist now, it's a weird kind of narcissism as well. It's the kind of person that you go to give love or tell them something nice or, anything, and they can't accept it. No matter what you do or how you say it, they just can't. And the more you try and push it on them, the more they feel like you must be making fun of them. Or like literally there's a wall for them to receive positive things. It's, to me, my heart goes out to those kind the most. But they are the hardest and worst to deal with. It's the scapegoat. The term scapegoat, the history behind that term is actually, it comes from Judaism. During, I believe it's Yom Kippur, they put all of their sins onto a goat, the scapegoat, and they let it free into the forest to free themselves of their sins. They put it all on this goat, and they let it free in the forest. They don't kill it. They let it free, but they shun it. They push it away. So, if you get this card for somebody in your reading, personally, just because my heart feels for them, I would explain to them what that person that's a narcissist and hurting them really went through. I wouldn't necessarily advise that anybody should stay in that relationship, but at least understand, that person is not anything more than life made them to be. I know, I just have a soft spot for that. Honestly, I have a sister that was a scapegoat. She took her life in 2016. I was the golden child, but I tried to give her as much love as possible, and she just obviously wasn't having it from the golden child because she was just like, you're the golden child. I never, but it takes a toll on somebody, you know, and it's a tough card, but I would just basically explain the perspective of the scapegoat. Like, this person was never given that positive anything. So they don't know how to take it. And then, yeah, in relationships though, they tend to be attracted to people that are going to reject them or make them feel terrible, or that's their love language. So they don't feel comfortable unless they're being treated badly. So I would be a little surprised though. You know, I really don't. I don't know everything, obviously, but I'm just explaining to you what the card means. Take it as you will. You're the reader. So, but that's the basis of that card. The scapegoat is somebody who just was never given positive. They were only given negative everything. So their inner voice is a negative self-talk. So I know for me, I mean, I'm actually very, very attracted to scapegoats. I know it's kind of funny, or probably not, but what I do in a relationship with them is I constantly give them the praise that they don't want, and trust me, it's not a fun ordeal, but after a while, when you repetitively, you know, give somebody these things, it starts to retrain that negative inner voice. Because if you look at somebody every day and you say, you know, you're a light bulb, you're a light bulb, you're a light bulb, you're a light bulb. I mean, after a while, they'll have heard you say that you're a light bulb so many times, they start to think, I'm a light bulb, I'm a light bulb. They don't want to believe it, but they've heard it so many times, it reprograms it. So that's kind of what I do personally with a scapegoat, but it's deep trauma that I wouldn't recommend for the average person. But if somebody's actually in love with somebody who is a scapegoat, that would be my advice, is you've got to attempt to repetitively retrain that negative inner voice, because they were given nothing but negative their whole life. So even just the thought or the sound of something positive, they can't accept it. It's foreign to them. They're allergic, like, you know. So that's what I have to say about the scapegoat. Hope that helps. And finally, we have Neptune, the boss, the parent, parent-child, know-it-all, leader, emotional enmeshment, clingy, unhealthy parental relationship, treats others as children, anxious, bossy, vengeful, responsible, loner, judgmental, ultra-high standards. So the parent-child is going to be more of a result of like enmeshment, which would be when your parent treats you more like a friend. And this will happen like if usually when there's a single parent, they'll do that, or basically they get treated like an adult or the adults, so they worry about the bills, they, you know, yeah, so they tend to be, as adults, they're very bossy, or they're know-it-alls, or they're constantly parenting people. The dark side to this would be like they feel like they're giving punishments to friends, or, you know what I mean, like, oh, well, I'm teaching you a lesson, you know, which that can get very dangerous and toxic. But a lot of times these type of people actually tend to stay single, or they're used to being single, or because they're usually that they live at home with their parent or whatnot, because that's where they learned to be. But they have an immature side to them, because they didn't really get a childhood, so they're kind of like half child, half adult, like they were as kids. So if you get this card, definitely it's a sign that they're going to have a really close relationship, like, you know, those guys attached to their moms at the hip. So that would be the first bit of advice, is to see if they could get some space between the parent and the person. Other than that, just you would want to look at that person as kind of like a parent, because in their mind they are. So they tend to go and date people who are childish, so they feel like a parent, like responsible. Alright, and those are the 11 archetypes of the Narcissistic Oracle cards, available at the link below in the description box. Get your copy today.